The emergency klaxons echoed through the crystalline halls of the Galactic Council station as Ambassador Veltar of the Nexian Republic rushed toward the central chamber. His elongated fingers trembled as he accessed the urgent transmission that had sent shockwaves through the peaceful alliance of 47 civilizations. The great doors to the council chamber slid open with a soft whisper, revealing the magnificent amphitheater where representatives from across the galaxy gathered. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, carved from living crystal that pulsed with soft bioluminescent light. Floating platforms held delegates from dozens of species, each more exotic than the last. "Counselors," announced the lead scout, his voice crackling through the quantum communicator, "we have detected an anomalous vessel approaching from the outer rim. Its configuration defies all known starship classifications." The assembled delegates turned their attention to the massive holographic display that materialized in the center of the chamber. What they saw made even the most composed among them gasp in shock. Where council ships were elegant curves of polished metal and crystal, flowing like water frozen in motion, this newcomer was something else entirely. The vessel was massive beyond anything in their records. It stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull a dark gray metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Angular armor plating covered every surface, broken only by weapon ports that yawned like hungry mouths. Sensor arrays bristled from its superstructure like the spines of some deep space predator. "By the Seven Suns," whispered Counselor Tathrin of the Peaceful Collective, her delicate features pale with shock. "What manner of being builds such a thing?" Admiral Jean of the Altarian Defense Corps leaned forward on his floating platform, his 4 eyes studying the tactical display with growing alarm. The Altarians had once been warriors themselves, though that was over 2,000 years ago. Still, military instincts died hard. "The energy signatures are off the charts," he muttered to his aide, a young Altarian female whose tail twitched nervously. "This thing could power our entire home system for a decade. Look at those power readings." His aide's eyes widened as she processed the data. "Sir, if these readings are accurate, their reactor output exceeds our largest space stations. How is that even possible on a mobile platform?" The ship's design spoke of purposes the Council had long forgotten. Every line, every angle, every component seemed optimized for destruction. Massive gun barrels jutted from armored turrets that could rotate to track targets in any direction. Launch bays for smaller craft were built like fortified bunkers. Even the ship's communications array looked like it could double as a weapon. "Counselors," Veltar's voice carried across the chamber, his usual diplomatic composure cracking slightly, "in 3,000 years of galactic peace, we have never encountered anything like this. The vessel's design philosophy appears to be based entirely on conflict." The word hung in the air like a forbidden curse among species that had transcended warfare millennia ago. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably on their platforms. The concept of organized violence was so foreign to them that they lacked proper words for it in most of their languages. "Surely you're mistaken," said Counselor Vexari of the Garden Worlds Coalition, her voice high with stress. "No civilized species would create such an abomination. Perhaps it's some kind of mobile construction platform?" But Admiral Jean shook his head grimly. "No, Counselor. I've studied the old archives, the histories from before the Great Peace. This is a warship, pure and simple. Everything about its design screams violence and aggression." The holographic display zoomed in on specific sections of the alien vessel. The delegates could see the thick armor plating, the redundant systems, the hardened communication arrays. This was not a ship built for exploration or trade. This was a ship built to fight and win. "Where did it come from?" asked Ambassador Zilmoth of the Traders Union, his mercantile mind already calculating the implications for galactic commerce. "Our long-range sensors show no inhabited systems in that direction." The lead scout's voice crackled through the communicator again. "Unknown, sir. It appeared at the edge of our detection range approximately 6 hours ago. Its trajectory suggests it came from the unexplored regions beyond the outer spiral." A collective shudder ran through the assembled delegates. The outer spiral was considered the edge of civilized space, beyond which lay only empty star systems and cosmic debris. If this ship had come from there, what did that say about what might be lurking in the unexplored regions? "Have we attempted communication?" Veltar asked, though his voice suggested he wasn't sure he wanted an answer. "Yes, sir. We've transmitted standard greeting protocols on all known frequencies. So far, no response. The vessel continues on its current heading toward the galactic core." Admiral Jean studied the tactical display with the eye of a former soldier. "Its course will bring it directly through our space. If it maintains current speed, It will reach the inner systems within 48 hours. The chamber erupted in nervous chatter as delegates from dozens of species discussed this unprecedented situation. None of their civilizations had faced anything like this. Their ships were built for beauty, efficiency, and comfort. Their weapons, such as they were, had been relegated to mining equipment and asteroid removal tools. "What do we do?" whispered Counselor Tathrin, voicing the question that haunted every mind in the chamber. Veltar looked around at his fellow delegates, seeing his own fear reflected in their alien features. They were about to encounter something completely outside their experience, something that challenged everything they thought they knew about civilized behavior in the galaxy. The dark ship continued its inexorable approach, carrying with it the promise of change. Captain Kim stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he gazed at the massive space station ahead. The structure was beautiful in its organic curves and shimmering surfaces, like a flower made of metal and crystal floating in the darkness of space. But his tactical mind automatically catalogued its complete lack of defensive capabilities. No weapons, no armor, no shields that he could detect. "Interesting," he murmured to himself. "Either they're very confident or very naive." The bridge around him hummed with quiet efficiency. Officers moved with practiced precision at their stations, their uniforms crisp and their movements sharp. The walls were lined with tactical displays showing weapon systems, shield generators, and sensor arrays. Everything was built for war because that was what humans knew best. "Sir," reported Communications Officer Lee, a young woman with keen eyes and steady hands. "We're receiving multiple transmission attempts. Their encryption is rudimentary. My nephew could probably crack this with his school computer." Captain Kim nodded. He had expected as much. A civilization that didn't build weapons probably didn't worry much about military-grade communications security either. "Patch me through when you've established a stable connection," Kim ordered. "And Lee?" "Yes, sir?" "Keep recording everything. Command will want to know what we're dealing with out here." Meanwhile, inside the crystalline halls of the Council Station, chaos reigned. Xenolinguists from a dozen different species worked frantically at their translation matrices, trying to decode the strange new language that had appeared from the void. The alien ship's transmissions were unlike anything in their databases. "The grammar structure is completely foreign," muttered Dr. Vexian, the Council's chief linguist. His tentacles moved rapidly across holographic keyboards as he tried different translation algorithms. "But there are patterns. Mathematical relationships. They're trying to communicate." Ambassador Veltar paced nervously behind the linguists, his elongated fingers twisting together in anxiety. Every few minutes he would glance at the main display showing the alien warship, its dark hull seeming to absorb the light from nearby stars. "How long until we can talk to them?" he asked for the 10th time in an hour. "Soon, Ambassador. Their language is complex but logical. We're making progress." Hours passed like this, with the tension in the council chamber growing thicker by the minute. Delegates whispered among themselves, sharing theories about where the ship had come from and what its intentions might be. Some suggested it might be an automated probe. Others worried it might be the vanguard of an invasion fleet. Finally, Dr. Vexian's triumphant cry echoed through the chamber. "I've got it. Translation matrix is stable. We can communicate." The main display flickered, and suddenly a face appeared that made several delegates recoil instinctively. It was clearly organic, but unlike any species they had encountered. The features were hard, angular, with small eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Scars marked the creature's face, speaking of a violent past. Behind the figure, they could see what was obviously a military command center, with other similarly scarred beings working at weapon control stations. Ambassador Veltar stepped forward, his translator working overtime to convert his words into the alien language. "Welcome, strangers. I am Veltar of the Galactic Council. We come in peace." The human's expression remained unchanged, carved from stone. When he spoke, his voice was calm but carried undertones of iron. "Captain Kim of the United Earth Systems Battleship Retribution. We seek an audience with your governing body." The name of the ship sent ripples of fear through the assembled aliens. Retribution. The word itself was loaded with implications that their peaceful civilizations had forgotten existed. It spoke of punishment, of vengeance, of consequences for wrongdoing. These concepts were so foreign to the council members that many of them didn't even have equivalent words in their languages. "The name of their ship," whispered Counselor Tathrin to her aide. "What does it mean?" Her aide's face had gone pale as the translation came through. "It means, payback, Counselor. Punishment for wrongs committed." It implies they expect to face enemies. Around the chamber, similar conversations were taking place as the implications sank in. This wasn't a ship named for exploration, like their own vessels with names like Peaceful Journey or Harmony's Gift. This was a ship named for war. Captain Kim, Veltar's voice wavered slightly, might we inquire about your intentions in our space? Kim's answer was delivered in the same calm tone, but the words struck the council like physical blows. We come to introduce ourselves to the galactic community, and to make it clear that Earth will not tolerate threats to our expansion into space. The casual mention of expansion sent another wave of shock through the chamber. Expansion implied taking territory, claiming resources, growing at someone else's expense. It was a concept that had been abandoned by every council species millennia ago when they achieved post-scarcity economics. But the second part of Kim's statement was even more disturbing. The threat implicit in his words was unmistakable. This Captain Kim was essentially declaring that his people would fight anyone who tried to stop them from taking what they wanted. Expansion. Veltar managed to ask, his diplomatic training the only thing keeping his voice steady. Yes, Kim replied simply. Humanity requires resources and living space. We will negotiate fairly for what we need, but we will not be denied. Admiral Jean leaned forward on his platform, his military experience allowing him to read between the lines of the human's words. Captain, when you say you will not be denied, what exactly do you mean? Kim's smile was cold as space itself. I mean, Admiral, that the retribution is not alone out here. And Earth's children have been fighting for survival since we first crawled out of the caves. We're very good at it. The council chamber fell silent as the implications of first contact with humanity began to sink in. Dr. Yu stepped forward in the council chamber, her tablet glowing with data that would shatter everything the assembled aliens thought they knew about life in the universe. She was a small woman by human standards, but her presence seemed to fill the enormous crystalline space as she began her presentation. Honored council members, she began, her voice calm and professional, I am Dr. Yu, chief xenobiologist aboard the Retribution. Captain Kim has asked me to explain humanity's origins so you can better understand who we are. Behind her, the massive holographic display flickered to life, showing a blue-green world that looked deceptively peaceful from orbit. But as the image zoomed in, the delegates began to see the truth of Earth. The first image showed a massive creature with teeth like daggers and claws that could slice through steel. It was hunting something smaller, faster, more clever. The smaller creature was using tools, fire, and teamwork to survive. This is a saber-toothed tiger, Dr. Yu explained matter-of-factly. One of thousands of predators that hunted early humans. We survived by being smarter, more adaptable, and more willing to fight than anything else on our world. Counselor Thekrin of the Valdoran Collective felt her delicate stomach turn as more images flashed across the display. Creatures with massive jaws that could crush bones. Flying predators with wingspans wider than her entire body. Ocean monsters that made their peaceful sea creatures look like toys. Earth, what we call our homeworld, registers as a Class 12 death world on your habitability scale, Dr. Yu continued as if she were discussing the weather. For reference, your most dangerous colony world's rate is Class 2. The mathematical implications hit the assembled delegates like a physical blow. A Class 2 world was considered barely habitable, requiring massive technological support for any civilization to survive. Class 12 was off their charts entirely. It was a rating they had created for worlds where life should be impossible. That cannot be accurate, whispered Ambassador Veltar, his translator struggling with concepts his language had no words for. Nothing could evolve in such conditions. Dr. Yu smiled, and there was something predatory in that expression that made several council members lean back instinctively. Not only did we evolve there, we conquered it. Every human alive today is descended from ancestors who survived ice ages that lasted thousands of years, asteroid impacts that blocked out the sun, supervolcanic eruptions that poisoned the air for decades. The holographic display shifted to show glaciers covering continents, massive explosions that lit up the sky, and through it all, small bands of humans adapting, surviving, growing stronger. But surely, Counselor Thekrin's voice trembled, surely the natural disasters were the worst of it? Dr. Yu's expression grew darker. Actually, no. The worst threat we faced was each other. New images flashed across the display, and this time several council members had to look away. Humans in armor, humans with weapons, humans organized into vast armies that stretched to the horizon. Battles that involved millions of individuals, conflicts that raged for decades. We've been fighting wars for our entire recorded history, Dr. Yu explained. Not small skirmishes over resources, but massive conflicts involving entire continents. We developed increasingly sophisticated ways to kill each other, and each war taught us new lessons about survival. Major Park, the ship's security chief, stepped forward beside Dr. Yu. He was a large man even by human standards, with scars on his hands and a bearing that spoke of countless battles. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had seen violence up close. Every human serves mandatory military service, he stated simply. Not because we want to fight, but because combat readiness isn't just policy for us. It's survival instinct bred into our bones. Ambassador Veltar felt his world crumbling around him. But surely you've moved beyond such things? Your technology, your space travel capability, surely you've achieved peace like the rest of us. Captain Kim stepped forward and his laugh was like ice cracking under pressure. We've achieved victory. There's a difference. The distinction hit the council members like a revelation. Peace, as they understood it, came from abundance and mutual cooperation. It was achieved through understanding and compromise. But victory meant something else entirely. Victory meant that one side had won so completely that the other side could no longer threaten them. We didn't stop fighting because we learned to get along, Captain Kim continued, his voice carrying the weight of human history. We stopped fighting each other because we ran out of enemies on our own world. Now we look to the stars for new challenges. Dr. Yu brought up a final series of images showing Earth's current military forces. Ships that dwarfed even the Retribution, weapons that could crack planets, soldiers trained from childhood in arts of war that the Council had never imagined. While your civilizations developed on garden worlds where resources were abundant and threats were minimal, humanity was forged in constant conflict, she explained. Every generation faced extinction. Every generation had to be stronger, smarter, more ruthless than the last, or they died. The council chamber fell into stunned silence as the full implications sank in. They had spent millennia developing art, philosophy, and peaceful technologies. Humanity had spent the same time perfecting the art of survival through violence. We are not evil, Captain Kim said quietly. But we are dangerous. Because that's what it took to survive where we came from. The gentle races of the galaxy stared at these newcomers and realized they had encountered something completely outside their experience. Humanity had not transcended conflict. They had mastered it. Captain Kim stood quietly on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the council delegates through the main view screen. Their alien faces showed a mixture of disbelief and what humans might call polite skepticism. He had expected this reaction. After all, how could beings who had never known real warfare understand what a single human battleship could accomplish? You doubt our capabilities? Captain Kim asked, his tone carrying no offense, merely professional interest. It was the same voice he might use to ask about the weather or request a status report. The silence that followed was telling. Several council members exchanged glances, their alien features betraying their thoughts. Ambassador Veltar finally spoke up, his diplomatic training helping him find careful words. Captain Kim, we mean no disrespect. It's simply that the Galactic Council commands a combined fleet of over 50,000 vessels. The Nexian Republic alone possesses more than 10,000 ships. While your vessel is impressive, it is still just one ship. Admiral Jean of the Altarian Defense Corps nodded in agreement, though his military experience made him more cautious than the others. We've seen your energy readings, Captain. They're remarkable for a single vessel. But numbers have their own advantages. Captain Kim listened to their polite doubts with the patience of someone who had heard similar words before. On distant worlds, from enemies who had thought themselves safe behind walls or shields or vast armies. The outcome was always the same. Very well, Kim said simply. Navigator Jang, plot a course to the Kepler debris field. Navigator Jang, a young woman with steady hands and sharp eyes, looked up from her station. Sir, the debris field is currently designated as a council mining zone. Their extraction operations are scheduled to begin next month. I'm aware, Kim replied. That makes it perfect for our purposes. The Kepler debris field was indeed a valuable resource zone. Thousands of asteroids rich in rare minerals floated in a rough spherical formation about 2 light hours from the Council station. The Council had been planning to mine it over the next 30 years using their careful, environmentally conscious extraction methods. Their mining ships would gently break apart each asteroid, sort the materials and transport everything back to processing stations. It was a slow, peaceful process that would disturb the local space environment as little as possible. As the Retribution and its escort of Council observation ships approached the debris field, the alien delegates got their first close look at the asteroid cluster. It was beautiful in its own way, chunks of rock and metal tumbling slowly through space, catching and reflecting the light of distant stars. The field contains approximately 47,000 individual asteroids, reported Dr. Vexian from one of the Council ships. Our surveys indicate mineral wealth equivalent to the annual output of 6 major industrial worlds. Captain Kim nodded as if the information was merely academic. Weapons Officer Nam, demonstrate standard mining protocol. Weapons Officer Nam was a veteran of the Titan Wars, a conflict that had raged in Earth's outer system before humanity had achieved true unity. Her hands moved across her control panel with practiced efficiency, but she paused before executing the order. Sir, full destructive capability or standard efficiency rating? The question made several council delegates lean forward with interest. If this was not even the human ship's full capability, what exactly were they about to witness? Standard protocol will suffice, Kim replied calmly. We don't want to alarm our new friends. What happened next would be remembered in council records for generations to come. The Retribution's weapon systems came online with a low, ominous hum that seemed to vibrate through space itself. The council delegates could feel it through their ships' hulls even at what they had considered safe distances. Energy readings spiked to levels that their instruments insisted were impossible for any single vessel to generate. The ship's main batteries rotated with mechanical precision, targeting systems painting invisible lines across the asteroid field. Secondary weapons arrays emerged from armored housings that the council members hadn't even noticed before. Point defense systems, mining lasers, particle beam projectors, and weapons with no names in any council language all came to bear on the floating rocks. When the firing began, space itself seemed to tear apart. What followed lasted exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds, though to the watching council delegates it felt both like an eternity and an instant. Beams of energy that could melt battleship armor sliced through asteroids like knives through paper. Explosive charges that could crack moons reduced house-sized rocks to perfect geometric chunks. Tractor beam arrays moved debris with casual precision that defied physics as the council understood it. The light show was overwhelming. Energy discharges lit up the entire region like a second sun. The council ship's sensors overloaded trying to process the sheer amount of destructive force being unleashed. Emergency warnings blared across every alien bridge as their computers tried to calculate the threat level and simply gave up. When the light finally faded and their sensors cleared, the council delegates found themselves staring at something that challenged their understanding of what was possible. The asteroid field had been completely transformed into perfectly sorted mineral deposits, organized by atomic composition and floating in neat geometric patterns. Every chunk of iron was grouped with other iron chunks. Every trace of rare earth elements had been separated and catalogued. The precision was absolute, the efficiency terrifying. Weapons Officer Nam, Kim called out calmly as if nothing unusual had just occurred. System Utilization Report. Nam's voice was equally calm as she read from her displays. Sir, we used 3.2% of available firepower. All safety protocols observed. We were careful not to damage the nearby shipping lanes. The stunned silence from the council ships was deafening. 30 years of careful mining work had been completed in less than 20 minutes, using only a tiny fraction of the human ship's capabilities. Questions? Captain Kim asked politely. There were none. 6 months later, the UES Retribution maintained a permanent position at the heart of Council space, its imposing bulk casting shadows over the delicate spires of the galactic capital. The massive human warship had become as much a part of the station's skyline as the crystalline towers that housed the various alien governments, though its dark metal hull stood in stark contrast to their flowing, artistic designs. The transformation had been swift and absolute. What had once been a galaxy where merchant ships traveled with minimal escorts, where exploration vessels ventured into unknown space with nothing but scientific curiosity to protect them, had become something entirely different. Now every ship that moved through Council space did so under the watchful sensors of humanity's guardians. Admiral Cho sat in his ready room aboard the Retribution, reviewing the daily security reports with satisfaction. The elderly Korean officer had been skeptical when Earth Command had assigned him to this mission, wondering if one ship could really make a difference in a galaxy spanning billions of star systems. Now, 6 months later, the evidence was undeniable. Pirate activities in the Outer Rim sectors, he read aloud to his aide, Lieutenant Beck. 0 confirmed incidents in the past 96 days. Previous 6-month period before our arrival showed 137 attacks on civilian vessels. Lieutenant Beck nodded as she updated the master database. Most of the pirate fleets appear to have fled beyond Council borders entirely, sir. Long-range reconnaissance suggests they've moved to the Andromeda staging areas. Smart of them, Admiral Cho murmured. The pirates had learned quickly that attacking ships under human protection was a fatal mistake. The first group that had tried it had simply vanished. No wreckage, no survivors, no trace except for a brief transmission to other pirate bands that roughly translated to run. But the pirates were not the most significant change. Admiral Cho turned to the next section of his report, the one that still amazed him every time he read it. The void touched entities from dark space. Status report. No incursions detected in 4 months, sir, Lieutenant Beck replied, consulting her tablet. Previously, the Council was reporting probing attacks every 2 to 3 weeks. The pattern held steady for over 3 centuries. Admiral Cho leaned back in his chair, considering the implications. The void touched were something the Council barely understood, entities that emerged from the empty spaces between galaxies to test the defenses of civilized worlds. They had been a constant, low-level threat for as long as Council records existed. Their complete disappearance was significant. Perhaps they've learned that this galaxy is no longer defenseless, he said quietly. Meanwhile, in the Council chamber, Captain Kim stood before the assembled representatives of 47 civilizations. The chamber itself had been modified to accommodate the permanent human delegation, with a section of the flowing crystal architecture replaced by more practical human-built facilities. The contrast was striking, where the alien section seemed to grow organically from the station's structure. The human area was clearly constructed, functional, and somehow more solid. The weekly security briefing had become a ritual that the Council members both anticipated and dreaded. They wanted to know that their space was safe, but they were often disturbed by the methods humanity employed to ensure that safety. The galaxy remains peaceful, Kim announced, his voice carrying easily through the chamber's acoustic systems. Our patrol vessels report normal traffic patterns in all major shipping lanes. 3 potential threats were identified and neutralized before reaching inhabited systems. The word neutralized sent a small shiver through the assembled delegates. In their languages, such a clinical term usually meant something had been peacefully resolved or diplomatically handled. When humans used it, the meaning was often more permanent. The Draknari Empire's advanced probe fleet has been discouraged from entering Council space, Kim continued, consulting his tablet with the casual manner of someone discussing routine maintenance. Ambassador Veltar, who had aged considerably in recent months, cleared his throat nervously. The stress of adapting to humanity's protection had taken its toll on many Council members. They appreciated the safety, but the methods sometimes kept them awake at night. Captain Kim, the Draknari have been expanding unchecked for millennia. Their probe fleets have tested our borders for over 2,000 years. How exactly were they discouraged? Kim's slight smile was answer enough, but he elaborated for the benefit of the newer Council members. We explained to them that Council space is now under human protection. We provided them with detailed specifications of our defensive capabilities. We suggested they might find expansion opportunities in other directions more suitable to their health. Councillor Taithrin leaned forward on her platform, her delicate features creased with concern. And they simply accepted this? The Draknari Empire spans 12 galaxies. They've never been deterred by diplomatic warnings before. Well, Kim replied thoughtfully, we may have also demonstrated our mining techniques on their advanced fleet's flagship. As an educational exercise, you understand. Very educational. The chamber fell into the familiar uncomfortable silence that followed most of Kim's explanations. The Council members had learned not to ask for too many details about human educational exercises. Lieutenant Commander Bach, who had been assigned as liaison to the Council's Science Division, approached the platform where Kim stood. She carried a tablet containing the week's exploration reports. Sir, the joint exploration mission to the Veil Nebula has returned. The Nexian survey team reports they felt completely safe throughout the expedition, even in previously dangerous sectors. They're requesting human escorts for their next 6 missions. Kim nodded approvingly. Excellent. What's our escort availability? The Defiant and Indomitable are currently available for long-range operations. The Vengeance is completing patrols in the Outer Rim but could be reassigned. As the briefing continued, Ambassador Veltar found himself reflecting on how completely their world had changed. 6 months ago, the galaxy had been a dangerous place where merchant ships disappeared, where exploration was limited by the constant threat of raiders and hostile entities, where entire civilizations lived in fear of the unknown dangers lurking in dark space. Now, for the first time in recorded galactic history, the gentle races could pursue their arts, sciences, and philosophy without looking over their shoulders. They had found the perfect guardians, a species that didn't just understand violence, but had mastered it so completely that their mere presence was enough to deter threats. The humans asked for little in return: some raw materials for their ships, scientific data from Council research projects, and the simple acknowledgement that when it came to matters of security, Earth's children would handle what needed to be handled. As the briefing concluded, Kim looked out through the chamber's great viewing ports at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, humanity's ships patrolled the darkness, ensuring that the galaxy's peaceful races could sleep soundly. It was a responsibility his species had not asked for, but one they had accepted with the same grim efficiency they brought to everything else. The galaxy was finally safe, and the stars had never been more peaceful.